Choosing the perfect portrait lens. Well, we're going to do a photo shoot little session here so you can see me live shooting and probably fumbling a little bit. I brought my own modifiers and I missed a few, so I kind of scrambled getting out of town. So my fault on that, but we're going to make it work because what is it? You got to just kind of make it happen, right? That's the motto. I want to start by just showing you a couple images before I go and we bring our model out and all that, because I think it's important to show kind of how I think in my brain when it comes to choosing the right portrait lens. The good news is we have a whole bunch of amazing lenses on the market. The bad news is my bank account doesn't normally allow me to buy all of them, right? And then you see a photographer use a really cool lens. You go, I got to have that lens. And then you buy it, and then it's like, well, maybe I overspent, or maybe I should have bought this other lens. All right, so let's look at a couple terms I use when I talk and when I show you these images. Perspective is one thing. Angle of view is another thing. Depth of field is important. And we talk about getting the best performance out of my optics. So I talk about the sweet spot of the lens, a diffraction, aberration, all those things. I think about that when I'm taking pictures. Now, I've been using the EOS R, the RF lenses with the EOS R, and the new EF lens or RF lenses are off the charts amazing. And when I say that, especially when it comes to the aberration side of things, you still get diffraction because whenever you stop down to the very small little aperture, you're going to get what you call diffraction. It's just the way optics work. You get aberration when you shoot wide open. With the new mirrorless and the optical designs, the aberration is minimized. It's absolutely amazing. So we're in a good time in history. So if you, in the past, ever shot with, say, a 51.2, and you shot wide open, maybe the center was pretty sharp, but the corners were soft. That's just the way optics worked. But we're in good times. So I talk about optics a lot. But let's look at some images that I have shot. And so when you think about a portrait lens, if you went to school and you got a degree in photography, they may have told you that the perfect focal length for a portrait lens was around 50 to 100 millimeters, something like that, right? Well, I shoot about 80% of my portraits with a 24 millimeter lens. So, wait a minute, can you get away with that? Well, that's my vision as an artist. So, we'll get to that in a minute. So I love wide angle because it gives me I guess you would say, a forced perspective that's stretched to the viewer. So usually the front of their face is a little bit bigger, and then I'll show you more examples here. There's a good example of a 24 millimeter lens, and the attention goes to the face, and then it tapers back, so it feels like that person is going towards you and in your face. That's what I like. Now, my son, Ben, who's also doing photography, he hates this. He shoots with a 7200 and uses a long compression all the time. So, not everyone's going to love what I do, but that's what I like, and I've built my career around the branding of this type of look. Here's a good example of, see the shoulder, how big the shoulder is, and then it kind of stretches. His hand is big. So, if I was in college, they'd probably give me a D- for this portrait if I turned it in, right? But I like it. So, in the end, the most important thing is, what do you like? Now, I shoot for clients. I'm a commercial advertising photographer. So there's sometimes I cannot get away with that when I'm doing an ad campaign. But most of the time, I'm doing it, but I'm pushing the boundaries of it, and the art director doesn't even know what I'm doing. They love what I do, so they're happy. So here's a 24 millimeter. Now that's f11 because I'm strobing outdoors. I've got to overpower the sun. I'm at 200th of a second, probably around ISO 100. Late light to get that, but 24 millimeter. So I am a fan of the 24 to 70 2.8. I used the version 2 that was on the EF. Now I have the RF lens. It's like, well, it's amazing. So I'm happy. Here's a 35 millimeter 1.4, the EF version 2. Absolutely amazing lens. And so I'm shooting wide open at 1.4, outdoors, in the field, strobing. In this case, I use an ND filter, but often I use high-speed sync now. So I get that super shallow depth of field, but still overpower the sun. So 35 millimeter is a semi-wide lens, but I can't get that softness with the 24-1.4, not quite as soft. So, but look how soft that background is. So you say, how is that possible with a semi-wide angle lens? Well, when you get to a 1.4 aperture, it's absolutely amazing. So I love that. There's another, about 28 millimeter. That was for a campaign. 7.1, you'll see a lot of my aperture metadata is 7.1 aperture because that's the sweet spot of my lens. I've taught that in photography 101. So you shoot down to f11, it's not going to be quite as sharp. If you shoot wide open, it's usually not quite as sharp. So I always talk about the sweet spot of the lens. You have to know that if you're shooting for clients. 24 millimeter lens. That was actually an HDR, so 3 snaps to get one final super, those 16-bit capture. And I love that look. Here's 24 millimeter again. See his leg is, distorted and whatever. I love it. Been doing that even back when I was shooting film and doing a book on the Navajo. I used what would be equivalent to a 24 millimeter lens. It was on a medium format, but I love the 24 millimeter perspective. Now here's a sports scenario where I actually set about 150 millimeters, so it compacts the whole thing, and that's a powerful look too. So you may be drawn more to the compacted feel and not this distorted, stretched feel. So that's good because, again, we need photographers that do all sorts of things, right? Instead of just one look. Don't copy what I do, but think about what do you like. That's the most important thing. 24 millimeter, I love it. You can see the pattern going here. 24 millimeter. Yes, her arm is kind of big, stretched. We'll do this in a minute here. I'm going to show you a 24 look. Another 24, Karan Clemens, gold medalist. Very simple, not quite as close to him, but yet still his hand is bigger. The one that he's leaning on the table is bigger. I don't have a problem with that. 24 millimeter. It's locked to my camera. Okay, here's a 7200 at 200 millimeter, so you get a beautiful soft background with a 2.8 at a 200 millimeter. Now, if you want a soft bokeh and you don't have the distance to stand behind a subject, you might go with an 85-1.2, which just came out, and I just got it like a week ago, which will throw that background out. The 50-1.2, I think I have an example of that. Here's a 35-1.4 again. See how soft that background is? This is shot under a bunch of trees, just right outside my where I live. There's a little park. So simple. People can be walking back there. Someone's parked a trash truck in the background, whatever. You don't have to worry about it because you're shooting wide open. There's the 50-1.2 on the new RF lens. Absolutely stunning lens. I love it. So I'm doing more of that kind of stuff. There's a 1.2. I was teaching a thing at Shutterfest or whatever it was. I can't remember now. ClickCon. And I went out in the streets. I had 25 people around me. I literally set that up, popped like that. So simple. Eye tracking. Literally, life's good. Okay? Now here is a scenario where I used a tilt-shift lens. And I've been doing this a lot. The cowboy that's the print behind there is shot with a tilt-shift, shooting 3 frames and with a 90 millimeter perspective. But when I get done, it becomes a 38 millimeter angle of view. Kind of hard to explain right now, but you get the compactedness of the 90, but the wide angle of a 38 millimeter. It kind of freaks you out a little bit, but that's a cool look that I've been doing for a long time, but it's using a tilt shift. Canon's got some beautiful tilt shift lenses. And the reason why I'm doing it is this reason, but also because it gives me a huge megapixel file, which I can blow up to 60 by 90 inches. So there it is. I did a whole thing on the Harley-Davidson shot with that technique. There's a stitched 5 images with a 7200 at 200 millimeter, but when I put it all together, it acts like about a 35 millimeter angle of view. Kind of weird, but it works. To get that look like that shallow depth of field, I'd have to have an 800 millimeter and be like, 50 yards back or whatever to get that. Well, I don't have that depth in that scenario. So that stitching technique allows you to do that. So the perfect portrait lens is determined by you, the artist. It's what is your vision? That's what's most important. Don't go by what my vision is, or your professor at college, or whoever's mentoring you. Go by what you love. That's what's most important. And you can go and choose the right lens. With that, let's see. You got the trigger? We need to get our subject out here. I haven't seen my subject yet. Oh, you're my subject. No. And I'm going to start with we'll start with the beauty dish. And we'll do I've got my 24 lens, or 24 to 70, a 2.8. I'll set it at 24 millimeters. And I'm going to go f8. I usually shoot on a tripod, so I can't. Oh, look I'm live. Okay. And all right, here we go. I'm Joel. Mark. Okay, Mark, have a seat on the stool. And I'm gonna work this. And there's a reason why I use a tripod. Because I set it all up and I frame it, and then I can move around and move stuff, and it's still all framed up. That's why I use a tripod. So we haven't done any testing yet here. And I'm going to swing these out of the way. So I'm going to start with just one light, and then we'll go from there. So we're at the power at 6.0. I don't know what that means right now. We're at ISO 200. And I got to go over here. And so since I didn't do a test, we're going to just go, I can't do live here. Can I do? How does it work? Where's that? Pull the black cord out. Okay. I get to pull the back cord. Oh, there it goes live. Okay. And we're going to fire one off. Then I got to plug it in. Okay, here we go. Plug it in. Then that should come up on the screen. Okay, so I'm a little overexposed. I'm at ISO 100, so this is not my camera, but let's see what happens when I do this. Will it change? No, my ISO has to be done on the back. I can't do it without... usually I set my ISO ring right out here. So we're going to pull this off, and then I go to ISO. We're going to go to 100 ISO. And then I got to shoot another one here. So 24-inch beauty dish at about 24 inches from my subject is a good starting point for me. And I'm going to go in again a little tighter here. 1, 2, 3. Now, I might try to get his hands in there. So we're going to go hit play. There it is. Exposure looks pretty good for me. Now, if you notice, the background is gray, and there's no light on the background, but it's being lit by my beauty dish. This is where the inverse square law comes into play, folks. I just did a whole thing where I broke down the inverse square law without any math. All visual. But what I know is that if I take my subject, this is 24 inches, well, it's about 30 actually. I know that I can darken or lighten my background by moving the whole set closer or whatever. So what I usually want to do is, because I'm going to add a texture in Photoshop later by using a blending mode of overlay, I can add any texture I want in that background. But right now, I know that background is going to be 2 stops darker than what it would be if I was shooting him up against it at the same distance of my strobe. That makes sense? 2 stops. All right. So that's 24 millimeter, right? Not bad, right? Does it look distorted to you? Not really. So I'm going to I'll do one more. I want to do one with his hands, and kind of like I would do. Usually I could put you on a apple box, but let's go a little wider. So let's see, I got to pull it out. We're going to go a little wider, and this is kind of how I do a lot of portraits right here. 1, 2, 3. I don't have all my gray in there 100% perfect, but now this is going to definitely stretch him, okay? Good or bad, you may not like it, okay? But if I'm telling a story, I'm trying to bring a character out in somebody, I love this, right? Maybe I could do one. I don't know if you could, it's kind of high, that stool. Does that go drop down, that stool drop down? Is there a, oh, it goes up. Oh, it does go down. Okay, so is it possible to cross your one leg, like cross your leg like that? Yes. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay, when you lower your subject, you lower the light. Otherwise, you get elongated shadows on the face. So here we go. I'm going to, oops, I pulled both of them. That's going to be a disaster, right? We're good? Okay, so now we're really going to stretch this. 1, 2, 3. There it is. Okay, I'd have his leg tilt up a little bit. Maybe I would square him up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Worked a little bit. Right now, it's just a little not quite right for me. But you see where I'm going with a 24 millimeter? There's a place for it, okay? So let's do that same portrait. Let's go to 35 millimeter, and let's see what that does, okay? So we're going to pull this out. You may like this better, and I might experiment, so I'm not always stuck with 24 millimeter. Okay, that's not bad, 35 millimeter, right? Okay, so let's go to, I love 50. 50 is a good millimeter. Let's try that. Okay, go back to about right here. Now, here's a challenge. As I back away from my light source, this starts to encroach in my angle. So now I got to pick it up just a little bit, but that's going to start to make the shadows longer. I can counter that with a reflector, but I'm just telling you, that's what I have to work with. 1, 2, 3. That's 50 millimeter. Now that would be considered probably pretty standard, not a bad approach. I can get away with it. I get maybe a B- in college. It's getting better. But you see where I'm going here? So let's try a 70 millimeter. I still got my 70 or my 24 to 70. And so in this case, I'm probably going to have to zoom in a little bit because I'm already. See why I put my camera on a tripod? I can't. Listen, I have my assistant with me. I can't fiddle as quickly. So here we go. We're going to do 70 millimeter. 1, 2, 3. Very nice. Very nice. All right. When I was in high school and college, I played in a rock and roll band. I used to write my own songs and sing and whatever. And I learned a couple things. One is you can write a song in a G major chord. Let me hit that again. G major chord. And you go, brum, and you know, it's got a nice, you can do a lot in G major, right? You change one finger, you get a G minor. You change one finger again, you get a G minor 7th, the blues. So with photography, it's the exact same way. You get to manipulate what you want the emotion to come off that screen or monitor or whatever, or the print in the end. You are the illusionist, the artist that makes it happen. So your choice of lens is extremely important. What light you use is extremely important because you're creating something that stirs the emotion to your viewer. If you don't have a strong emotional impact on your photograph, it falls flat. Who likes to create boring images? Nobody. We want images that snap. So people come to me and say, something about your images just have this extra little punch. It's because I'm thinking about every choice that I make, from lighting to lens to whatever. So don't go by what someone says, the 50 millimeter 1.2 is the perfect portrait lens. You decide what works for you. So, how are we looking on time? I just want to make sure. 20 minutes. Okay. Let's add a little bit. Now, I made a mistake, and I didn't get 2 equal lights, and I can blame it on my assistant. No, it wasn't his fault. So let's just do 1 Let's add one edge light, and then I usually do 2 edge lights with the same exact box, but I think I can get away with it. So we're going to add a little bit of flare here, and I got to pull this out. I got to get my glasses on. This is like a little bit of a juggling act here. So let's see what happens. Let's go with 35 millimeter, and I'm going to snap a picture with the edge light. Here we go. Did that go off? It did go off. Let me try it one more time. It didn't. I think it was a sleeping over there. So let's try it again. Oh, pull it out. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Well, so let's see what group that is. Group B. So I got to go and increase my power to group B, and I'm pulling all the cords out. So group B, I hit the little thing here. We're going to increase the power. Let's give it some juice. Okay, try it again. 1, 2, 3. I'm at f7.1, f8. Okay, so a little bit of edge. Probably it's too far forward for me. It's too far this way. So I got to back it up a little bit more, right about there. I want just a rim light. I don't want to light the front of him. So let's try that again. I can also have him come toward me just a little bit, which will help. Oh, pull this out. You're doing a great job. Thanks. Okay, I got a little bit of light in there, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. So I want to get that edge light just perfect. Now, how do I know when that edge light is perfect? Anybody? My intuition. It's the single greatest thing I possess as an artist. It's everything. You've been making millions of choices since you were a little toddler. Now you have to make a choice. And you make choices towards what you like. That's what we're trained to do. And sometimes we get in trouble for doing it. But I move it until I like it. Make sense? All right, let's add another edge light. Now this is a bigger one. The bigger the source in relationship to the subject, the softer the light. But in this case, we're going to just let it happen. Okay. Now that's group C, I imagine. And I'm going to go increase that up a bit too in power. Okay, pull the cord. All right, my lights are going to be in there, but that's okay. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Hit my button. There it is. Okay, now, this is where people send me pictures all the time, the 3-light, Joel Grimes, edgy look, and it's where they normally get it wrong. The most important light now is the overhead light because I want to create a mood. So I'm going to take a light, and we're going to drop that down in power. We're going to go one stop. Look at the difference in mood. Keeping the background lights the same. So we go 1, 2, 3. They went off there. Okay. Now, I can't kind of go back and forth, but look now how the center of his face now is a little darker, and now he snaps just a little bit more. Do you see that? So to me, it's all about feathering that exposure on the center light that's most important. Okay, we're going to do one more demo, and I'm going to grab and I think I'm going to swing you out over here, and I want to show a shallow depth of field and high-speed sync. So let's just get you to bring that stool over here. And it doesn't matter. We got a cluttered background. So just sit right there. That's good. That's good. Okay. And I want to get we'll put on can I turn the camera off, or do I just switch the lens? I want to switch the lens. Should I turn it off? Okay. We're going to get Let's try the 51-2. This is a beautiful lens. And I've used this lens a lot, so I got to turn the camera off, switch the lens, try not to drop it. The only time I've ever dropped the lens was in front of 70,000 people. I was at the Broncos rally before the Super Bowl. They had me go out in the middle of the field shooting John Elway and Dan Reeves and the CEO of AT&T. I had a big down coat on, and I switched lenses and put one under there. And as I went to step back, I dropped the lens, it hit my foot and rolled right up to John Elway in front of 70,000 people. And all the photographers on the sideline started clapping. So that was really fun. Okay, so I actually want to go to F8. We're going to do 200th a second, F8. And I'm going to try to do this as best I can on the fly. And we're going to show you what happens when I shoot at F8. And then, so let's go right here. Okay, autofocus. What did I do wrong here? Eye tracking. There it is. I got to hit the button. I set my camera up, and then I pick up another camera. It's not the same. Okay, we should be around F8. I'm going to fire one off. At 200 seconds, it's going to be kind of dark, but let me take a look first. We're going to take a look here. That's terrible. I'm not going to show you the terrible one. Okay, let's go down to 60th of a second, F8, and I got my A light. I turned it down. Remember, I turned my power down on the A light. So let's go back up. Come on. A. Hold on. I'm fumbling here. We want manual. Here we go. There we goes. Okay, we're going to go up to 6.5 output. Okay, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. This is going to show you. All right. Not going to win me any awards, right? I got a lot of, stuff in the background. And it's still a little too dark back there, but I can't go too low. Well, I can put it on. No, not this lens. This doesn't have image stabilization. But what I'm going to show you is the coolest thing on the planet. So we're going to go to my sync. Where's my guy? It's showing menu. I am. There it is. Okay. We're going to go to high-speed sync. Now, here's how it works. I'm terrible at math. I'm going to go into high-speed mode. I want to shoot at 1.2 aperture. So, for those of you that are like me, we're going to count the stops up. Let's see, it'll show here. Count the stops up as I go here. Okay, ready? So, I'm going to count in thirds. I hope this is set up in thirds. My camera is. 1, 2, 3. That's 1 stop. 1, 2, 3. That's 2 stops. 1, 2, 3. That's 3 stops. 1, 2, 3. That's 4 stops. 1, 2, 3. That's 5 stops. And now we go to 5 1/3 stops. So now, if I take a picture, it's going to be 5 stops overexposed. Let me show you. Oops. I don't want 5 stops overexposed, but I want to show you what it looks like, and I'm going to count it for it. Okay, so I hit this button. I'm not touching. Okay, I just lost my client, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my shutter speed. We're going to go up that direction. 1, 2, 3, 1 stop. 1, 2, 3, 2 stops. 1, 2, 3, 4 stops. 1, 2, 3, 5 stops, and a third. So I'm now at 12/50th of a second in high-speed sync. And if everything goes right, I do these demos a lot, so they usually work, but if I screwed up something, it'll show. Okay? All right. Let me turn this. I'm still a little overpowered on him. So let's go down 2.5 stops, somewhere around there. Okay, pull this out, focus. What I want to do is show you how high-speed sync is so incredible. All right, so now I have him lit perfectly. The background is a little dark, but not bad, right? So I can now take and feather my background. I'll go down to 800th of a second, and we'll do it again. And this should be a really nice, clean bokeh. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Whew. I'm actually sweating. Oh, that's nice. Look at that. Very nice. Okay. What I want you to get, though, is that I have a choice now of shooting at high-speed sync with shallow depth of field, mixing my strobe with ambient, and it takes a few counter things. Does that make sense? It's not that hard. I kind of, when you got cords sticking out, and well, you know how it works. When you're in the hot seat, sometimes it's a little harder. But the idea is, let me hit that button again. Can you see that come up? That background's thrown out. So I do this in like downtown situation where there's lots of clutter going on, and I just like, bang, perfect. Yes, question. Oh, he's waving. You get it? Understand? So an 85 1.2 would even be more of a dream. The longer lens, the softer the background at a given aperture. So I'm going to give you one little hint. Let's say you look at the price tag of an 85 1.2 and you go, right? But they have I'm not sure, not in the RF or the EF, they have an 85 1.8, correct? Beautiful lens. Well, an 85 1.8 shooting from about here is a really cool look too, right? Do you know how I can make an 85 1.8 look like an 85 1.2? You move in about a foot. Maybe a foot and a half. Now, that crops in a little bit, but what I'm saying is, yes, an 85 1.2 is a dream. But if you have a budget, you can get away with a lens that, or use your 70-200 2.8 and back it up to 200 millimeter, incredible, incredible soft bokeh. Does that make sense? So, play with remember I said the perspective, angle of view, your f-stop, your shutter speed, or f-stop, depth of field, and start building a look that fits what you love. Make it your signature. And then I'm known as the wide-angle portrait guy. So on my gravestone, my wife's going to say, the wide-angle portrait guy, or whatever. I'll die with it. But it's because I love it. It's actually served me very well. So, but don't copy me. Just go out and do your thing, right? So do we have enough time? We have 6 minutes to ask any questions that you want related to photography. Yes?
When you do shoot wide, do you worry about, are you shooting up with that, or are you trying to keep it parallel to your subject?
Okay, so the question is, when I'm shooting wide, what angle, if I get too low or too high? Yes, I'm watching that, but it's my intuition that tells me if I've gone too high or too low. Does that make sense? I typically shoot from a little bit low up, because that's the superhero athlete, right? It's always low up. That's what I do. Another question. That was a good question. Yeah, come on. You got to do better than him. Come on. You have no questions? Why Canon? All right. There's a couple reasons why Canon. Canon is in the business of going from the capture to the print. What other company does that? There's not one. Canon also has, I think, the best choice of lenses on the planet. I shoot a 17 tilt shift. I stitch it. I'm standing at the Point Lobos next to Carmel in California, where Edward Weston photographed his 8 or 11 by 14 camera 50, 60 years ago, whatever it was. And I'm standing there at the same spot close, I don't know exactly, but it's called Weston's Cove. And I have a 17 tilt shift. I'm shifting up and down, and I'm getting this incredible angle of view of 11 millimeters with my 17 millimeter shifting up and down. I'm doing HDR, and I'm getting a picture that Edward Weston would have never dreamed of getting. It's the choice of lenses that I have that make Canon, I think, one of the best companies out there. I have a 24 tilt shift I use for a lot of ad campaigns. I just shot a big campaign for Chrysler. Almost every shot was with my 24 tilt shift. I'm shooting the portrait of this guy with a Dodge truck in the background. Then once I get that plate done, I shoot left and right. I extend the canvas to the left and right. Then I shoot up and down. I extend the canvas up and down. The art director now, I build it all together. He gets one file with choices of billboard, banners, whatever, out of one file, one frame. So I'm using tilt shift lenses, and I couldn't do without them. So that's why. Okay, so the question he was asking is, if I'm creating a different focal length with a tilt shift lens, or when I do a stitching. So think about this. If I take a 24 millimeter 1.4 lens, I have someone standing, I shoot at 1.4, click. I'm shooting at the shallowest depth of field that lens will give me, which is about a foot of depth of field when I'm backed up full length. If I take an 85 and go click, 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 get 6 frames, and put it all together, say I shoot it at wide open, 1.2, I put it all together, I get a 24 millimeter angle of view, full length portrait or whatever, but with a shallow depth of field of 1 inch. So I'm creating something I can't do with just one lens. Does that make sense? It's not something you got to do at every shoot, but it's something that's available for you as a creative artist to go and check out. Does that make sense? Try it.
When you're stitching landscape, are you moving this way or are you moving?
No, you have to have a nodal point system. I'm setting this up, and my camera, I have to get here's my little scales. I figure out my nodal point, and I'm shifting on the nodal point axis so that the program allows it to be stitched together. So this is not that expensive, but I use it all the time. See, it's in my bag, right? I don't go without it because it's a really good tool. Yes? Okay, so the question is, how difficult is it to be, I'm a photographer, and I'm colorblind? Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. My being colorblind, you probably would look at as a handicap. It happens to be the greatest secret, or I guess advantage that I have, because I create images that are a little different than most people on the planet, which makes me stand out from most people on the planet, which is what we all want to do, right? So it's actually a benefit. Now, when I first started out, it didn't look like that way. So if you're 6'8" or you're 4'8", that plays into an advantage. You might look at it as a disadvantage, So don't look at something that you have, like no hair, That could be an advantage because that's a good fill card. Just take a speed light off the top of your head. But we look at things as disadvantages, but they actually become advantages because it leads us down a path that's different than someone else. And that's what everyone in the world is trying to do. So embrace your whatever it is. I embrace my color blindness, and it becomes actually a benefit to me. I retouch all my own work, and I shoot national ad campaigns, and not one art director has ever said, this is not right. How is that? Because I created the Joel Grimes look. That's what they're hiring me for. So color balance, perfect color balance is not as critical to me as it might be to you. So, good question.
Getting back to the tilt shifting, you're using a tilt shift lens, but so you're moving the camera, but you're not shifting.
No.
What is it you're using the tilt shift lens?
The tilt shift actually moves up and down. The camera stays still. The tilt shift goes up and down or across. Not the camera. This, you move the camera. So a tilt shift, there's no parallax, perfect. I can drop it into photo merge in Photoshop, and bam, it's perfect every single time. Nodal point, sometimes it gets a little off. I have a program called PT GUI, which is $100, not very expensive, and it solves a few problems that I might have in photo merge. It's usually pretty good. So it's a little more work on nodal point. It's a dream on tilt shift, but the tilt shift only gives you 3 positions, not 5, or not 3 rows. Or I go horizontal, vertical, but there's a gap in between. So, but there is a guy who developed a thing that actually rotates the whole ring to get kind of the corners. It's a really cool thing. But anyways, I explore all these ideas. And I'm doing tilt shift portraits. Who's doing that? Not too many people on the planet. So I'm always exploring something with lenses. I love optics. Optics are incredible, and that's why when you asked about Canon, Canon gives you options that are incredible to fulfill your vision as an artist, and that's what's most important. So thank you, guys.